to share with y'all this moment I just have that I'll have to screen record it and post it on IG or whatever. But so I started, okay, let me backtrack. So for those who don't know, my dad has been gone. If Joshua will be 19 next year, it's been 18 years. And I'm still learning so much about him. And I strongly recommend, if you have a connection with your family members, learn as much as you can about them so you can pass that on to other generations. LaToya Thompson, which I hope I'm saying her name right, is either LaToya or LaTanya, and I do apologize, I'm mispronouncing your name. I have a habit of doing that. Lord help me with that. She makes quilts, and for her birthday, she wanted us to do a poem based on the quilt that we chose. And with the quilt she makes, it's not just like a normal quilt. It's like artwork stitched within the quilts. If you can find her on Facebook, please do. When I was picking out my quilt, even though I had two in mind, one stuck out to me because the lady on the quilt immediately reminded me of my grandma Mary. And I flashed back to a story where my grandma Mary, who is my father's mother, said, I don't even know how your daddy went to school, but he went to school. She said, all I could give him was a Bible, and he graduated. I want to say daddy was one of the first Black engineers at Becton Dickinson. I have to check with my mom to make sure I'm not saying something incorrectly. Daddy graduated from Tuskegee University. He went to high school at Baptist Hill. And I started writing the poem. And the poem basically was speaking on, he wasn't willing just to settle for dirt roads. For anyone knows anything about country living and living out in the boonies, you can choose to be a part of that environment and not grow. You can still be there and grow, but sometimes you have to leave and come back, or leave and never come back. I lived with my daddy, even though he went off to school. He went to New York, went to school, moved to something with his job. He was always coming back home, helping with whether it was my uncles or my grandmother, my aunts. He was always back in Hollywood, South Carolina. But I never knew how he was of a student, but apparently he had to be a good student because he was able to go to Tuskegee and pay and become an engineer at his job. Like when you're in doctor's offices and you see BD, that's my daddy. Well, not anymore, but that used to be him. So I immediately, as I'm writing the poem, I called my mom and started asking her questions. But she said, well, you need to call his best friend, who was Robert Lee. And those of you know, y'all know who he is. He's a staple in Hollywood, South Carolina. And him and my dad were best friends. Now, granted, my daddy, if my mom just turned 70, daddy would have been 73 this past December. So talking to my mom, I learned enough about her that I will share that in another post, another day, or another poem. I'm thinking about including in this new book, Eminence. But I learned so much about my mom, and I already knew these things about my mom. I'll admit my mom is more talkative than daddy was, and she's sharing more. And I've been with her longer. Let's be honest. Daddy's been gone almost 18 years. And in that time, my mom has shared a lot about herself and her journey through school, how she knew since first grade she wanted to be a teacher. Those of you know, she is a retired teacher, almost 30 years in the classroom. So I got the poem for her, but I was like, I need to get some research for daddy. And this is the type of poetry I look forward to writing, when you have to do research to make sure you're not communicating the wrong information, to make sure that you're accurately depicting who you're trying to depict. So called my cousin, because I called Robert Lee and he told me call him back. He didn't answer. So I just took it like, okay, dead end. And then I was like, well, let me call my cousin Donnie, because even though my cousin Donnie is my dad's nephew, they're very close in age, because there's a huge gap between my grandmother's sons. The two oldest ones are closer in age, and then my dad came way after. So let me call Donnie. And Donnie was like, nah, you do better calling Robert Lee, because they were best friends. And I was like, well, he didn't call me back. He's like, I'll call him and I'll tell him to call you. So then I was like, so I called my mom and was like, well, who can I talk to? Fast forward, Robert Lee finally called me back. I'm about to take y'all down a rabbit hole. Y'all, I found out my dad was on the newspaper at Baptist Hill, the newspaper staff. Who else was on the newspaper staff in high school? Your girl. He took pictures. He was a photographer. So he basically, Robert Lee went through an old newspaper and he was like, I can mail it to you. And I was like, that's fine. Then he got caught up. And he was like, he just started reading stuff about my dad. And then I told him a story that my mom, basically how him and my mom met. And he was like, your mom told you everything that was nice. But it was so refreshing. But I came on here, number one, to share a connection I found that made me miss my dad, in which I knew these things. Like daddy would share stuff, but I don't know. Sometimes I go through these moments where I feel like we didn't have enough time. And as a result, I didn't learn enough. But I just share that with y'all to share. If you have patriarchs and just people you value, get to know who they are so you can pass their story on to other people. And I don't know how the poem is going to come out, but when I say I'm really excited about the information that I learned, I wish like I could talk to teachers, but I'm pretty sure if Daddy was 73, and I might be wrong, I doubt any of his teachers are still alive now. My mom admits some of her teachers, because we were at a homegoing of a cousin of ours, and one of her elementary school teachers was there. My mom's 70. Like I would love to see if I can find someone who taught my dad. Anyone who went to school with my dad. Baptist Hill, I think E.B. Ellington was the other school he went to, because they didn't have middle schools back then. It was elementary and then high. And just, yeah, it was just, it's a bittersweet moment, but it's a beautiful moment. I'm really excited about where this can go.